of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At our last board meeting, we had, the room was pretty well filled with firemen and other first responders. And when we did the pledge, it sounded like the U.S. Army was reciting the pledge. Was pretty, it gratified me to hear that. So, okay, we were going to start with item number 1, public comment. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Do we have anybody online that would like to make a public comment? I see an F. Hello, Francisco.
Good afternoon. Just a couple of things. There's been a subcommittee or ad hoc committee on real estate.
Yes.
When is that likely to be reported out in one of the committee meetings, and which one is that?
We have reported out on our progress on that, and chances are we will make, we're having a meeting. The real estate committee is meeting on the 26th, and we're not really supposed to engage in back and forth, but I just want to ask you, do you know the purpose of that committee?
I thought it was to identify assets that the district own and see if there's any there that would lend itself either to leasing out or selling outright or finding a useful purpose on it than just sitting there vacant.
Well, that's exactly what we're trying to do. And I think that we'll have some meaningful progress to a report at the next general meeting of CCWD. Like I say, we're having the meeting of that ad hoc committee on the 26th.
Great. That's my follow-up is the same question on the contractor that we hired or the consultant that we hired to help us find grants. It's been, I think, well over 3 months, and I don't recall hearing a peep about, hey, we applied for all this and all that or anything else.
Okay. Thanks for pointing that out. I hadn't been thinking about that, but I also would like to hear a report on that. So
great. We're on the same page. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Not on at this point. Thank you.
Okay. Well, you can take your minute left and add it to the next time you have 3 minutes to talk.
You got it. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Approval of the minutes. This is a kind of a sticky issue because I was not here for the last meeting. So we have to
Can we just
roll
table that?
Yeah, we're tabling that and rolling
We'll
it
just
over
table
to.
that.
Yeah, we can do that the next time the regular committee meets. Okay, going on to item number 3, new business. We're reporting on the monthly financial reports for June 2024. This is a pre-audit report.
Well, no. Excuse me.
Yes.
We're going to have, we're going to move 3E up to the top so that.
Well, when was I going to hear about that?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not.
I mean, he came at 2
Wait a
minutes to
minute.
1. I mean, that's.
I resent that. I sat in the parking lot until I had 2 minutes to make it. So. Okay, so 3E is moving up. And Kelly Richards is going to do this. Come on, Kelly.
Oh.
I don't want to do it that badly.
Setting up.
Long enough. There we go. Okay. Good afternoon. Let's start this over. I will be reporting today during Finance Committee on our Tyler Financials project. And this is something, as many people are aware, has been a long time coming for CCWD. And just to provide a little bit of a introduction and background. Our district, we've gone through an implementation, a partial implementation of Tyler. As we're all fully aware, that involved our utility billing and some of our miscellaneous AR. And those modules went live in September of 2021. We are now kicking off the finance and human resources department's implementations of their part of the system, which is the core financials module and payroll and personnel management. And this will actually, once we move forward and we are completed on this side, is the total implementation for Tyler that we were looking at doing from the get-go.
Right.
So this will complete that process.
Let me ask you a question. I was perhaps dozing there a little bit, but that portion of the implementation is anticipated to occur when?
For the finance and human resources,
Yeah, and payroll particularly.
that is what I'm launching into right now.
Okay.
It's happening as we speak, actually.
Uh-huh.
We've already kicked it off.
Ah,
So, part of the project overview is that CCWD has already been in talks with Tyler. We've already kicked off the project, and part of the beginning phases or parts of the project are the initial conversations and establishing our internal project team. So that is comprised of a steering committee, a project manager, any of our technical leads and change management leads. So these are members of our CCWD organization who are very familiar with the module or the processes involved with the modules that we're implementing, and obviously are working together to support the mission and ultimate outcome of the project. We are a smaller district, and thus our finance and HR departments are smaller. And so we are duplicating, in some cases, roles within this team. And so several of us are wearing different hats as we move forward in this implementation, just because there is some crossover in some of the role responsibilities for each of those team members that I mentioned, and then also because our departments are relatively small anyway, so we do have to take on several of these roles. In addition to that, we have established and we're continuing to establish our functional leads and our power users. And they will be critical as we move forward in this implementation. So our functional leaders are those who are authorized to make procedural decisions within their respective departments. So they'll be critical as we move forward with the project and making sure that everything is built correctly within the new system. Our power users are our subject matter experts. So those of us who are running the processes on a daily basis and are ultimately responsible for providing all the critical insight about our current processes so that the configuration on Tyler's side is the most efficient that it can be. Our CCW team will ultimately work with the Tyler team, and they have a multi-dimensional, multi-level team on their side as well. And basically, both sides will come together to implement all of the core financial and payroll / personnel management modules during these very key block implementation phases. And I'll get into that a little bit more as the presentation goes on. But ultimately, it will culminate in an integrated system that will fuse not only finance and human resources together, but also the utility billing side as well.
How many people are we talking about in this core or in this segment?
So you're talking about our entire finance team, our HR team, myself, and then we also have advisory consulting that's being performed by Eide Bailey, and you may remember them. They came in and also assisted during the budget preparation process. So they are going to be providing some additional advisory support as we move forward with this implementation. And then once we're able to evaluate the utility billing side as well, again, once we have the finance side built, they'll be critical in that aspect as well.
So are we talking 10 people?
So we are talking about 10,
Mhm.
about 10 staff. Roughly.
Okay, thank you.
So some of the key milestones as a part of this project, and I certainly don't want to downplay, the simplicity of this slide here, but we are very much in the thick of this implementation already. We're doing a lot of the preliminary and phase 1/phase 2 work right now. And again, I'll get into the phases here shortly, but when I say we, I mean our project implementation team of finance staff and HR staff will be involved in this implementation very deeply through the end of this year, from now through the end of this year. And what it involves are current future state analysis meetings. So these types of meetings are between CCWD staff and Tyler staff. And these are the critical kind of kickoff meetings that we have with Tyler in order to discuss our current way of doing things, our current way of running the processes that we run. And then we start making decisions about how these will look in the new system. We talk a little bit about Tyler's capabilities and how we may want to configure these within Tyler compared to how they're currently configured within Springbrook or ADP, which is the software we're using for payroll and HR. So that's one of the first milestones, and I can comment on that and say we've successfully completed our current future state analysis meetings for our core financials block implementation and our payroll block implementation. So we right now are working on putting together our chart of accounts build with the Tyler project side. And we will need to get that dialed in and do some data validation in time for us to kick off the core financials block implementation, which will happen in mid-October. So a lot of work still for us to do between now and the middle of October when we kick off that first block implementation. And when I say block implementation, Tyler has presented these modules, specifically the financial management suite, which is the core financials and the payroll and personnel management modules. They implement these in what is called a block implementation, whereas we're familiar, or I'm familiar in my past lives, in implementing software over a very long period of time, anywhere from a year to a year and a half, depending on how much data you have to convert over and validate, how big of a system you're converting over. And so this is very different. It's not a long drawn out process. It is more of a ripping of the Band-Aid, if you will. And core financials specifically will be configured, tested, and validated and rolled out into a live capacity within 3 to 4 weeks. And so that is
Within 3 or 4 weeks of commencing that project, or 3 or 4 weeks?
no, within 3 to 4 weeks of commencing the block implementation, which we are now scheduled for the middle of October.
Okay.
Okay, so that is for core financials. And then we will segue over into the payroll block implementation. And that includes not only payroll, but it also includes personnel management. So a lot of the same things that ADP as a software provides to us, not only the payroll, but also time and attendance, direct deposit, all of our retiree payments that we make, anything that is facilitated through our service through ADP will now run through Tyler through the payroll module. And that block implementation will kick off and kind of overlap our core financial implementation a little bit in the middle of November, beginning/middle of November. And that will carry on for about 5 to 7 weeks. So we're looking at a potential go live of payroll and our personnel management modules within mid to late December. Then we move to the ancillary implementation, and these are smaller modules that are kind of standalone that cannot be implemented until we have gone through these 2 block implementations. And that includes our time and attendance for staff, fixed assets, project accounting, and our budgeting modules within Tyler. And that will take about 2 weeks. So when all is said and done through all of these, implementations and the phases that we go through, we are looking at being fully live within Tyler and integrated within Tyler by the end of this calendar year.
Okay, now, if I remember correctly, we were running help me understand where we're running the 2 systems at the same time. So have we now gotten rid?
No, we're not. We are still running within our old system. So we're still currently running within Springbrook and ADP. But once we go live at the end of the core financials block with the core financials, purchasing, and bank reconciliation modules, we will be fully operational. Yeah.
Then we can cut that.
Well, so what it ends up being with Springbrook is that we have a different contract with them that continues. It's not a maintenance contract. We simply have access. It's like historical data only. Okay, so if we need to go back in and we need to see something or compare something within Tyler and make sure that it ported over correctly, maybe we realize that something wasn't caught in data validation. I mean, there could be, many reasons why. We would want to keep that historical data from Springbrook for a period of time. And that's pretty normal for an implementation, at least in my experience. There's been a little bit of overlap, but it's not the same contract that you would have if you were fully operational in the system. We just have access to the system for data, and that's it.
Tell me, how are we working our financial part of that? Because we're still running the 2 systems, and didn't we have to complete a contract with ADP or something?
Well, so we're still running with ADP.
Right.
And there will be some parallel processing that has to happen as we move forward with that payroll block implementation. We will have to run a parallel payroll processing, say that 5 times fast. We'll have to run that between the 2 systems. So we will not yet be live in Tyler with the payroll. We'll simply be testing the process. So we will have to run it within ADP and within Tyler to make sure our outcomes are the same prior to obviously going live. So there will be some paralleling that takes place. But the reason why they move forward with these very quick, rapid block implementations is so that you don't have a long period of time where you're potentially paralleling between 2 systems, which leaves the agency open for a lot of data discrepancy errors, things that will need to be cleaned up. This is, like I said, more of a ripping of the Band-Aid where they, as a part of their master implementation Tyler goes in and does a lot of our data validation for us on the front end. And so we go in and we kind of clean it up a little bit. And then we just move forward with testing and making sure all of that is dialed in, and we go live. We have a transitional period with Tyler. Obviously, once we go live, they don't pull away and say, well, we're done and good luck. There is a client transitional, like client services element. So we kind of segue out of implementation status into a support status. And so if we go in and we're noticing there's something wrong or something that needs to be addressed, they have resources available to us during a period of time, which is, I think, about 2 months post go live for these modules for assistance, for direct assistance to us.
And how is our staff responding to?
I think, well, Michael, you want to comment? No, I'm just kidding. I think it's, when you're entering into any implementation, I think it can be very daunting, and this, we've been told in order to get these modules implemented by the year is very aggressive. It's a very tight schedule. We've been told that, extending it out another 2 or 3 months, it would be the norm, but we're also trying to take into account the fact that we want to be very cognizant of when we transition our payroll over. The transitioning at the beginning of a calendar year is a great time to do that. And it does help for historical purposes as well, having, a cutoff date that is significant. December 31st was the last day that we were operating, in our old systems. So,
Because I'm thinking of we are going into the end of the year, and we're historically see a lot of vacation, right?
right. So that being said,
Uh-huh.
there's going to be a lot of staff that are still here and going through this process. Again, I don't want to downplay how important and involved every staff person in these departments are going to be through this project, but it is phased. So you have finance kicking it off and doing their block implementation, and then it segues into HR. And obviously there's still a financial element there, so we'll still be present, but it's going to be all hands on deck for the next 4 months.
Yeah,
and
right.
We've had the department heads and myself have had many conversations about, what are our alternatives and are they feasible and what does this look like? And we've come to the conclusion that we just need to get it done. We have a great team here in both finance and HR who are very smart, and we're all going to pull together and we're going to make this happen. And maybe in the past implementations, we didn't necessarily have that, or we weren't equipped with the right staff or the right mentality. But I think we are also working with a great Tyler team. We have some wonderful people so far who have jumped in and been very knowledgeable and have been with Tyler for a long time. And we have some great resources that Tyler has allocated to us, and we don't want to lose those resources. You're not guaranteed that you're going to get a great team from Tyler either. And we have a great team. And so I think we have a recipe for success here, even though it is going to be a brutal 4 months for CCWD staff in those departments. But when all is said and done, we'll come out on the other side, and we will be fully operational within Tyler in those departments.
I'm sorry, I keep taking up Russ. Go ahead.
Do you mind if I ask a couple of questions? Okay, Kelly, just a few things here. Tyler, apparently you just mentioned that they're a little resistant to getting this done by the end of the year, the payroll part, by December 31st. Would it help you if you were able to tell them that the board said there will be no end of December checks
Yeah, we won't be paying you, Tyler, unless it's completed.
No, I'm
No.
talking about your.
Oh, us? Oh, my goodness. I mean,
You
you know,
asked for that.
The
you know,
big,
I should tell you, Russ,
the
that
big
it's
thrill.
actually our staff's, how do I even say this? Our mental instability that has led to us committing to this timeline. But in all honesty, I think we've had some very deep conversations, and it is going to be difficult. It is. And we have started having conversations with the rest of the management staff, and, just letting everybody know that there's not going to be any wiggle room in either one of these departments for the next 4 months to be pulled away on anything other than just what gets them through their day-to-day operationally, and then this project. So, for everybody to keep in mind and just be a little more, again, just conscious of the fact that staff is going to be very deeply in this project and also handling our day-to-day operations.
Has there been any thought about having any temporary hires to help you? Or
Well,
is that feasible? Is it even workable?
it's not necessarily feasible, I would say, for either one of these departments. Finance is very involved in the way that we do things. You really have to understand the ins and outs
Right.
of what it is that we're doing here. And same with HR. We are very unique in our setup in ADP and how we run payroll and semi-monthly basis. And so it really is just going to be all of the staff coming together and making this happen.
Because I would tend to say if there was something that could be, taken away, certainly we could find some way to work around it.
Right. Well, and that's where we have Eide Bailey. We have a gentleman with Eide Bailey who is going to be working with us, like I said, in an advisory capacity. And he'll actually be assisting us quite a bit in taking a look at kind of how we're doing things and maybe helping us optimize a little bit, but also just, making sure that we are asking the right questions and exploring all of our options as it relates to Tyler and the implementation. He's worked with Tyler in many, many occasions through various implementations, and has had some good insight so far as we've gone through the current future state analysis meetings. So while we won't have any kind of any help on the front end for our operations, it's just going to be a rough couple months for staff. But again, like I said, coming out of it after 4 months and having a new system as opposed to having this carry on for a year and a half, I think is going to end up working out better for us in the long run.
Yeah, but please don't feel hesitant at all about asking for help or asking for something.
Right.
Thank
you.
Money's no object.
I don't know, Jeff.
Oh, yeah. Don't tell her, okay? Don't tell her I said that.
I asked her if she was going to be listening in, and she said no. So.
That's right. No. No.
Bertha, do you mind if I ask another question? You allowed me one, so I'm just curious. Time flies so fast, but I remember, oh gosh, a sequence of events that early on in this discussion about transitioning, the board was faced with a dilemma that said, oh, well, we're going to spend some money on upgrading or getting a supplemental attachment to our server so that we can still work with Springbrook. My question is, where is this information going to be stored? Is it in the cloud or?
It is. It's all external. It's hosted by Tyler. So this is not an on-premise hosted solution. This is all through Tyler. And so Springbrook, we will still have our Springbrook server, housed here, and that's how we can access that data on-prem. But this will not be hosted here. It is hosted through Tyler, which is why you do have you're a little bit more restricted as far as access and changes to the system. We have to work through Tyler anytime that we want to have changes made. We've seen that on the UB side. It's pretty standard in a lot of these, cloud hosted environments that it's not hosted on our server. So we need to work through them to make any changes. But I would say through this process so far, we've built a much better relationship with Tyler than we've had in the past.
How about catastrophic anticipation of something blowing up in the web? Is there a backup assurance? Have they explained how that would work if our information suddenly evaporated, or what? The worst case scenario.
Well, so if the cloud goes down,
Mhm.
I have no idea how that would even work. I would probably have to tap into our IT staff to get some more specifics on that. But as far as I know, we should have access to this regardless of whether or not our internet can go down. And I believe when it's still accessible offline, so we can make changes. And then once we get online, it should re-up everything. But as far as the entire internet going down or Microsoft going down, like what we saw, recently, I'm not sure what the backup is on that.
Could you ask that question? I'm just curious about whether they have anticipated these types of potential problems, and it would seem to me that they would do their own backup
Right.
off at some alternate location every 90 days or something, so that you wouldn't lose everything that you have. So.
And I believe that they do. That is a part of it. But since we are going to be kind of facilitated a different way, I would assume that they would be able to present you with a copy of your environment, either in like a back client version where it would sit on your desktop as opposed to being facilitated through the internet. I'm not sure, but I can follow up. I'd like for this to be a standing topic for future meetings so that I can keep you updated on our progress, and I'd be happy to report back on that.
I suspect that there may be others that would be concerned about that as well.
Absolutely.
Right.
So just, did that answer all your questions?
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I did just want to provide a little bit of our timeline and let you know where we are in the process right now. So we have a total of 6 stages throughout this implementation. And so kicking off phase 1 is the very early stages, which is our initiate and plan stage. And we have successfully completed phase 1 as a part of this implementation. That involved our first meetings with Tyler, our first discussions. We had conversations internally about our project team and who was going to be responsible for what. We also worked with Tyler to establish blackout dates and any periods where we would be unavailable as a part of the project. And then we also got established within a project management site through Tyler. So we have a project management SharePoint, a project SharePoint for this particular implementation where a lot of our communications, documentation, and everything is housed. So it's that central location to keep everybody on track and keep a lot of the communications centralized. So that was our phase 1 that we have already completed. Phase 2 is where we did go in and assess and define what we were looking for in this implementation. So what CCWD's goals are, which obviously are to have successful data conversion and configuration of both the finance and HR sides of this system. And then we had orientation meetings. So staff was put through mandatory orientations for both the finance side and the chart of accounts side is what we've done so far. We had our current future state analysis meetings. We put together and met with our, we call him the data guy from Tyler. So he was responsible for letting us know what data deliverables we needed in order to do the data conversion. And then staff worked together to gather needed documentation and reports and data for that first initial data pull. So we successfully have completed phase 2. And right now we are in phase 3. So this is where we are preparing the solution. We have done our data delivery or data pull, which included all of that documentation and reporting that was requested, in addition to providing Tyler with a snapshot or a copy of our current system, our Springbrook system. So all of the data in there. So right now, Tyler and CCWD staff are working together to, really configure and test and refine the modules. Once we hear from the folks involved on the chart of account side and the system environment configuration side, we'll be diving in a little bit deeper to see what they have built so far. And we'll begin our end user training because it is it's a very thorough training program that Tyler puts you through for these modules, and certain trainings you cannot take until you've taken basic level
So
training.
that you'll understand.
Right.
Follow through completely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're going to start kicking that off here very shortly, and it will continue through the rest of the implementation, the training part of it.
Tell me something, during the process of getting ready to cut, have you done a lot of weeding out of dead material or dead information?
So that was actually a part of our first and second phases that we did, was the data. They had directed us and said, if there's anything from your upcoming legacy system that you do not want to have brought over, go ahead and clean that up as much as you can within your current system. But we will be doing data validation here very shortly with the Tyler folks.
More data validation.
Yes, and we'll be going in and doing more validation and more cleanup here in within the next few weeks. Mm-hmm. And that will take us on to phase 4 or stage 4, which is production readiness. And this is where the bulk of the validation of the modules happen. This is where our staff will be in the thick of it and making sure that things are configured properly, that when they run processes and they're testing things, that we're getting the same result out of the Tyler system as we are out of Springbrook, because again, we're still live in Springbrook at this time. And this is the opportunity for staff to work with Tyler to build our operating procedures that we will need in order to function within the Tyler environment. And we will continue our end user training through that time, which will dive much deeper into the actual nitty gritty and how we use the system and run the processes. Phase 5 follows, and that is what they have called production. And this is where we go live. This is where we launch our modules, and we are fully operational within the new system. And we move from an implementation status to a client services status, where it's a transitional assistance and support that we receive from Tyler at that point. And there's specific post-go live activities that happen, which is additional training. So there's post-go live training that happens even once we are fully live in the new system. And then we continue to work with Tyler to report any issues. And there's a specific mechanism that they have in place for communicating any issues that are needing resolution. And we work with Tyler very closely to make sure that we get resolution on those items in a timely manner so that it's not preventing us from operating within the new system.
And this is the phase that you said will be completed on or about December 31?
Correct.
Okay.
And that will be for both finance and HR. And then we move into project close. So this is essentially where we, review everything with Tyler. We make sure that we're dialed in to operating in both of these departments. We review and we move to project acceptance at that point. We will then become regular Tyler end users and clients at that point, and we will utilize their services that they have available for all other modules, which we've been using on the UV side, and that includes Tyler University, which is continued education through their modules. If there are any changes or any updates, they have resources there. There's Tyler Community, where we can reach out to other agencies and that are utilizing our very same system and communicate with questions and issues or things that are working. And so it's kind of a forum. It's a community for people to communicate, talk about the good and the bad, and try to make connections and network that way. And then they also have their support features. So you can file support cases online. You can chat with a representative online. You can call into their support and they can work with you directly. So at that point, we'll utilize those mechanisms for continued knowledge and integration into the system.
Can you please remind me of how big Tyler is?
How big of an entity they are? They're a very, very big company. I don't know specifically how big they are, but I do know that they have acquired a lot of smaller softwares and integrated them in, taken them under the Tyler umbrella and made them their own. But I would say they're one of the bigger companies, ERP solutions out there. So they've scaled very quickly though.
Mhm.
And I think, as I've reported in previous meetings when we've talked about utility billing, I think the fact that they've scaled so quickly and to be so large is probably what's kind of contributed to, unfortunately, some of their support being slightly lackluster. But
In the past.
right, but this team that we have for implementation, for this part of it, has been very responsive, very knowledgeable, and I've been pretty impressed with them so far.
Maybe you have mentioned that before. Yeah. Okay.
You mentioned the term of Tyler University for this post closeout. Is there a tuition involved in that?
Some of them are tuition based, actually. So a lot of the instructor led courses where you can go in and maybe you have new staff or you have somebody who comes in and maybe there's a module that you didn't have or a lot of training in and you want to get your group in there. Some of them are fee based, but they have a lot that are not fee based. A lot of them are self-paced. They have webinars. They have PowerPoint presentations. They have documentation. There are a lot of options in there where you might be able to circumvent the cost-based teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's always forgiveness of student loans too. So.
Right. Yeah, I didn't get to benefit from that one. I had to pay all mine. But one of the things that I did want to dwell on, because it is kind of the it's not included in the regular schedule that we have for the next 4 months. But the training is so important, and you can go through an entire implementation and come out the other side and your staff has no idea how to use it. And so I
Don't
really,
tell me that.
I know.
Don't tell.
But what I want to dwell on is the fact that we have a very robust training program as a part of this implementation. And probably the most detailed I've seen from the several implementations I've done with Tyler, which is great to see. But it is very involved. And so this adds to the schedule. And even though, we are still moving forward in our day-to-day and we are going to be implementing these modules, there's still the training element that has to be incorporated into the schedule as well. And some of these trainings are maybe an hour or two. Some of them are 4 to 6 hours, depending on how detailed the process is. So I'll be working very closely with Jeff and his staff and Stacy and Kate, and then other CCWD staff who will need to have training as well, because they may be integrated into the AP or purchasing modules, time and attendance. All staff is going to have to know how to enter in their time and access this as the new version of ADP. So it's going to be district wide, maybe not as intense as finance and HR over the next 4 months, but there's going to be district wide training that happens as a result of this entire process.
Okay, and you just said entering their own,
Right. So our staff currently in ADP will enter in the time on their time cards. Any time that they are working in regular work, project work, anything like that is being entered in through ADP and calculated that way. It will transition to Tyler. And so staff will need to know how to utilize the employee self-service or ESS portion of the system for not only entering in their time, but requesting time off, accessing, their information as it pertains to the HR side of things. And so there will be some training involved in that as well.
so support of that in the field, how will we handle that?
Well, we'll have to coordinate and work very closely with Damon and Pat and Jesse and all of their staff. And we'll probably have to get creative. I'd like to think of,
Because equipment, I'm thinking of equipment that you'll need.
no, it's just online.
Mhm.
It will just be online. So no different than how we're doing it through ADP now.
Oh, okay.
But we'll want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable accessing the software and knowing where they need to go and how to enter everything in. So, whether it be we, bring everybody in for a training day or, we split it up. If there's some online training, we'll have to figure out what's best for each department and work with the department heads
Yeah.
on that.
I'd like to know when you have a training session. I'd like to sit down in on one of those.
We'll have a lot of them coming up.
Are you looking for a job or what?
But I did just want to touch on some of the trainings that our staff will have to go through. So like I said, this is kind of a phased approach and they'll have to learn the basics. So it teaches them how to access and navigate a front end dashboard. They can add favorites for certain, areas that they're going to be accessing on a regular basis, depending on what their position is. And then you can run reports. You can also schedule reports. So if there's a particular report that you need every Wednesday, you can schedule it so that it pulls by itself every Wednesday. You don't have to do that manually. And then there's something called grid customization. So, the way that your Tyler is presented to you, you can modify grid layouts, the information that's presented to you in certain tabs. It's very customizable. But takes a little bit of time to do that. So they'll go through training for that. There will be configuration training. So staff will learn how to work in the GL, add a new vendor record, set up a new deduction if they need to on the payroll side, add a new bank account. So there's, various things that they'll learn there, along with several others. Then we'll have end user training. So staff will learn how to post a journal entry, enter a payable, process payroll, reconcile a bank account, among other things. And then here's that post-production training I was talking about, where we'll have additional exposure to putting in a budget and how to run our fiscal year-end process. How to move forward with issuing W-2s and any payroll corrections. So again, this is just a snapshot showing you some of the things that staff is going to be exposed to in the training process, but there's much, much more. And so I'm feeling very confident that our CCWD staff will be very well equipped and able to operate efficiently within the system once we go live. As with any implementation, I do have the disclaimer that there's always something.
Mhm.
There's always something that comes up post-production, and I feel wonderful about this group that we have here. Like I said, extremely knowledgeable, critical thinkers, and definitely staff who wants to make sure that things are done right. So I'm looking forward to troubleshooting with them and getting everything cleared up so that we can have a successful go at it when all is said and done. So like I had mentioned before, all of this is expected to be up and running by the end of December 2024. And just to hammer home again, that, you know, staff will be responsible for not only our daily operations, but they will be involved very deeply in this implementation. And so we ask for your support and your grace during this time, because really this is a huge focus of ours, and we want it to be successful, and we're committed to making it successful. So we look forward to the end result.
Mhm.
And I'm willing to open it up to any questions at this point, any additional questions.
Go ahead.
It's your turn,
Okay,
Russ.
all right. I think I heard you say something about that you wear, you're having to wear a number of hats in this regard. How many hats do you wear?
Oh, well, me personally, I only get to wear one, which is great. I'm helping to project manage the project internally, but you've got Jeff, who's wearing multiple hats through this as part of the steering committee, but then also part of the super user and informational lead and functional lead. And then you've got Stacy doing the same thing on her end, you know. So but we've got like I said, a great team and a number of people here who we're keeping the communication open. We're meeting on a regular basis. We're having internal meetings. We have our first scheduled biweekly project kickoff meeting as we're moving forward with Tyler and that team at the end of this month, and we'll be meeting with them regularly biweekly. So it just is really ramping up. Like I said, we've been working on it, but things are really going to start you know, moving full speed ahead here within the next week or so.
My question is, how difficult would it have been without your past knowledge? I mean, you took, you know, you said that you had done this in some respect
Right.
in your past lives.
I think that this is, I'm going to be honest with you, this is a different implementation than I have ever done.
Okay.
and
That's what
so-
I was curious about.
Right. And so I would say if it had mirrored a previous implementation where it was kind of a long drawn out process, I might be able to say, okay, well, this is the part of the implementation where we do this, and this is where we do this. It's helpful to have gone through it with Tyler because a lot of their lingo and, you know, when they talk about their project management plan and their operational plan, those are things I'm very familiar with, having gone through this with them before. Their pre-go live checklist, so they have you know, go through a pretty rigorous checklist and check and balance before you go live. And so if there's anything that's not built correctly, you've got to get in there with Tyler and get it fixed before you can go live. But I would say really having the experience with Tyler and implementing with Tyler in the past is very helpful.
Mhm.
But I would say having the team that we do now is going to be the most help, because I've been on a past implementation where we had a great team and it was, successful. And then where we didn't have many people available to implement, and it was a little disjointed and fractured, and you didn't feel like you were making the progress you should be making and that it was successful as it should have been. So I think, like I said, the staff that we have now and the dedication that we have now, the communication for this project so far with Tyler has been great. And so I'm looking forward to moving forward with them at this point. Yeah.
Okay. You've given us some assurance that this will be in large part implemented, changes made and stuff by the end of December. But, I understand that there could be hiccups and stuff, but
Right.
how many months or years down the road will it be until this is so running so smoothly that it's just going to be a piece of cake or usual and customary, no hitches?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think a shorter amount of time post go live before you're running, fluidly, if you have a solid implementation.
Mhm.
And I think that's where, maybe we've faltered in the past on the UB side. We didn't maybe have a lot of the key players involved at that level to make sure that it was more of a recipe for success. And I think, like I said, this time around, we have so many people and so many heads involved. We've got IT dialed in. We've got, Stacy and Kate. We've got Jeff and his staff. We've got myself. We've got, support from other departments at this point. We've kind of done some cross training and support with our new customer service staff to try to lend some extra time for me to participate. So I see this so far as being successful already. And we're on a great trajectory here to complete it. Now, could there be things that come up in the middle of the implementation that prolong it? Absolutely, that happens. But part of these meetings that we have with Tyler include a risk management element. And these are things that we talk about and that we have actually as a part of the project implementation piece. And so we go through that risk management conversation during every meeting with them of any potential issues that we might have with personnel, with connectivity, with access. I mean, anything like that, we address that with Tyler, and we come up with a solution or a way to keep the project moving ahead.
Okay. I suppose that it goes without saying that if you heard from the board that we're going to do something weird like 4,000 or 13,000 new AMR meters and stuff, that you would raise your hand and say, don't do that for the next 2 years or something.
Not now.
Yeah.
Now's not the time. Yeah, no, it definitely not the time right now to make any big moves. We
Okay.
need to get dialed into this new system first, and then we can talk big moves later.
Well, I think that that to me it was the big fly in the ointment in this implementation and switchover. Would it be worthwhile for you to mention to Tyler that, by the way, you should tell potential clients not to do stuff like CCWD did?
Right. Well, I have had that conversation many times with various folks from Tyler. In fact, I think, is Damon still in the room? No, Damon took off, but he and Pat were recently at an AWWA
Right.
meeting down in San Diego where they were talking AMI with other agencies, and that was the big topic of part of their presentation that they made was, here's what not to do. Your AMI, implementation has the potential to be very successful. Just please consider not doing it at the same time that you update your CIS or billing software. It's just, and again, I back that 100%. It's just a recipe for disaster.
This is something the board needs to, pay attention to.
Well, it's too late.
Well, I know it's too late, but, this is only 2024.
Yeah. Future boards you're talking about. But anyway, thank you so much.
Thanks, Kelly.
My pleasure.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's,
Hope this worked out okay for you, Kelly. Going
Yes.
first.
we got all the way down to 3C. I guess we can go to Director of Administrative Services now.
Oh.
There might be. Yeah, looks like Michael Rogers. Michael, your
Yes.
hand.
Yes,
Go
hi.
ahead. Hi,
Uh,
Michael.
Thank you. First of all, thanks, Kelly, for this detailed presentation. I think from my perspective, I'm glad you're on the project. I went through a similar SAP rollout in my past life and the much larger organization, and it took years rather than months. I'm a little concerned about how ambitious the timeline is, but I guess with Tyler's experience and your past experience, you're comfortable with the timeline. Bertha, you had a question about Tyler. Did a quick little research. They're a public company, about $1.9 billion in annual revenues. They do have a pretty good track record for financial performance over the last 10 years. They're growing. But relative to the other ERP vendors out there, they're a small player. They're relative to SAP or Salesforce or Oracle. They're a very small player. Having said that, they focus on, municipalities and public agencies, and that's their core business. So they understand that business. I think migrating over to a cloud-based solution makes sense, particularly for an agency of this size. So, but my specific question is really taking the broad view of this. What is the financial investment that we are making with this transition, and what ultimately is the return that we're going to see from this investment? I mean, the hope is typically, hey, you're going to have efficiency gains and things like this, but hey, I'm just going to throw out a number. Let's say over the next 6 months, we're spending $1 million in services and people and hours and modules and things like that. What ultimately are we gaining other than retiring an old legacy system?
Michael, we might be able to respond to a part of that, but there's an awful lot of noise in the background. Are you boiling water on your tabletop?
It's not me. It's not coming. It's not here. No, I hear it too, but it's not coming from me.
Okay.
Somebody's got their mic on or something, I guess. But, so, hey, I assume you folks did your due diligence and looked at this and said, hey, this is going to have this impact on our budget. But, as a ratepayer, I have to ask the question, what is the benefit and what kind of return are we going to see from making this investment?
I'm not sure that I can answer that, and it's probably not proper that I try. However, I will tell you that this is probably the biggest black eye that the board has been exposed to over the last couple of years. I mean, we were led down this path by somebody who's no longer here, bringing up some questions about the capability of Springbrook. We were told that this would be an easy transition, and it didn't turn out to be so easy because we chose to install 13,500 meters, automatic meters, radio read meters at the same time, and tried to roll that into a billing module that didn't exist. anyway, it's something that we certainly would not repeat again. I don't know that we could give you a dollar figure that it's cost, but certainly making a transition like this over to Tyler would not have been for free. There would have been costs associated with that, but I don't know whether we're 2x at this point. Maybe so, but I don't know. When you get thrown into a raging river, Michael, you just have to swim until you get to a safe spot. So
Yeah. Well, hey, I respect that. I mean, hey, these things are, when you get into them, and Kelly, I think, your homework that you guys did in phase 1 and phase 2 are absolutely critical to this, because if phase 1 and phase 2 are not effective, are not, broad-based, we're gonna run into problems. So I hope and expect that all that work that you did in laying the groundwork here makes this go as smoothly as possible. But my experience is that, with ERP systems, there are usually, some stumbling blocks along the way, and let's hope there's few. But I would hope to see that as an organization, that CCWD, implements this, and we have greater efficiency. We can do more with fewer people, that, there's some sort of return to us as an organization and as a community when you make this kind of investment. And I would encourage you to do those kinds of assessments as a board for any major capital expenditure like this, and say, hey, are we, what's our return? Are we going to get a return in 3 years or 5 years or never? Because that's really important to us as ratepayers, that we know that the money's being spent wisely, and that we're going to get something back, some sort of efficiency gains. We're going to have fewer billing errors, or whatever the case may be. So with that, I'll close my comments. Thank you.
okay, well, speaking as this particular board member, I have learned my lesson. So I'll try to make every effort to make sure that the objective that you have verbalized will be attended to. So, okay.
Thank you.
All right. I think I see Francisco with his hand up. If you're ready, Francisco, go ahead. There's the noise. You start. You're very broken, Francisco. Say again.
Thank you. I'm on the website for Tyler. I'm facing data. When will we be made aware of what that stuff will be like? What are the capabilities?
I didn't get the entire question. Can you repeat that more slowly?
Citizen-facing financial data is mentioned by the Tyler website as one of the benefits of implementation. What kind of data will citizens have access to?
Did you say fiscal facing?
Citizen facing.
Oh, citizen facing. Okay.
I'm not sure. I will need to follow up with Tyler on that.
Great. It's on their website as one of their key benefits. They have 45% staff as being previously in the public sector, so they should know their stuff fairly well. I'll look forward to your answer.
Okay, I will get that for you. Absolutely.
Thank you. I'll get a better connection next time.
Okay, thank you. Any other online questions? All right, well,
Okay. Thank you very much, Kelly.
before we go to the next 3A thing, can we take a 5-minute break, please? Okay, we've returned to take up new business. Item 3A, report on the monthly financial reports for June 2024. And this is Jeff Meyer.
Thank you. I just want to caution everyone at this particular point in time, these are pre-audit numbers. We are still going through year-end close, which makes sure that all the costs are allocated correctly to the different departments, divisions, things that are paid after June 30th that were for fiscal year 23-24 get moved back. So this isn't still a moving numbers, but we're pretty darn close.
And this is historical. I mean, we go
Exactly.
through this every time.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to kind of point out is when we look at operating revenues, and I know this is kind of small, but I do believe you have it in your notebook, in your agenda packet.
Right.
Some of the key things to take a look at is overall, our operating revenues are a little over 97% of budget. And I think that's pretty darn good, especially as you look at some of those numbers are transfers in, and I'll get to that in just a moment. Total, when we look at these items here, what really stands out to me is water and sewer revenues. We're at 101% of budget. That's pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm.
We used, I don't know if you remember, but when we prepared last year's budget, we used the numbers that were included part of the rate study. So we worked with Habib and looked at that because with the new rates, we weren't quite sure where we were going to be. So we got pretty lucky on that.
We sort of influenced the luck. I mean, if we hadn't adopted the rate increases or assumed that they would be passed, then we would have had deficiencies. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And the changes we made to the rate study were in the latter years of the rate study because your board understood that we really had to address the shortfalls in both the water and sewer fund, operating funds early on. That's why the first 2 years, I believe, remained unchanged.
Just very minimal change.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
When other things that I look at here, the main operating revenues, property tax came in at 106% of budget. We get our property tax estimates directly from the county. And obviously they tend to be like me, conservative in your approach on estimating revenues. So we're pretty good on that end. Another wet year helped New Hogan revenues. And they were 128% of budget, while the North Fork was only 93%. Part of that is the North Fork project does not use rainfall and water levels to provide us our revenues. It's based on a Bureau of Reclamation CIP that changes quarterly.
Okay. Can we go back to
I'm sorry, CPI, not CIP.
Yeah, CPI. Property tax. I've never really thought about this before, but why? How can we justify having that 3.7 million as an operating revenue? It seemed like that should be other revenue or something like that.
It comes in because it supports our operations. Actually, when you think about it, we get a portion of it in non-operating revenues that go to our interest reserve fund. So we split it up.
Okay. All right.
Now, the one of the numbers here is under budget, and that's our transfers in. We transfer money into our operating budget to take care of our debt service on our CIP loans and our other loans we had through USDA for Reach 3A and AMI. Those funds come from our R&R funds, 125 water, 135 sewer. We also, and I know this can be confusing because it's sometimes confusing to me, is that to be able to adequately show all our salaries and benefits in one picture, because we prepare the operating budget, which is water, sewer, and now hydro. some of our staff actually work on CIP projects. So we have to assign their time into CIP funds, 120 and 130, 120 for water, 130 for sewer. But if we do that, we don't show total salaries and benefits in the operating fund. So what we try to do to show it in the budget is we estimate what our projected salaries and benefits are going to be on those projects and show that as a transfer in from those funds into the operating funds. However, in reality, when payroll works under under ADP, those costs are allocated directly to the CIP projects. We don't need to transfer in. I'm still trying to figure out a mechanism to be completely transparent on the total amount of salaries and benefits in our operating budget. We made some good progress in how our operating budget has been updated and presented for this last year. That's the next step for me, is to be able to show, maybe by some of these funds, to show exactly how they are within the CIP fund, so we do not have this transfer in process.
All right. So you're going to work that out then?
Uh-huh.
In the
That's my
future?
goal.
Okay.
I wanted to just comment on, what was it? Oh, property taxes. We're hearing doom and gloom from the county.
What?
Well,
Go ahead.
one of the things to remember about property taxes, that those property taxes also include standby fees. And what we have also in that area is when we have these improvement districts, when we do standby fees, that's the majority of our fees under the title property taxes.
Oh.
We, and I can't remember the exact number, but our portion of the county's general property taxes is maybe around $700,000, somewhere in that area. The bulk of them are these improvement districts that we have. So when the property taxes, when the county predicts their property tax revenues, we only get a small portion of that. The rest of us are improvement district fees.
Jeff, I've got a question on this interest income line, the X03 interest income. I've never seen over there on the benchmark column, something that is 4 or almost 5,000%. Looks like it's higher than budgeted.
Yes.
Why did we only budget 15,000 whenever we actually collected 749? Or 305,624 in 2023. Where'd the 15,000 come from?
Part of that is the fact that on the sewer fund, since it's negative, it doesn't earn any interest. So that's one thing we look at. The other part is Chandler has been buying or selling and buying new investments, because when they first started out with us, they used our investment policy to be able to structure their investments, not only in the type of investments we can purchase, safety, liquidity, yield. You remember that saying?
Mm-hmm.
And also looking at the timelines. And a number of the investments they had purchased at the time looked really good. But then all of a sudden, as you're aware, inflation hit and the returns on investments took off. So they are now have transitioned out of most of the old investments during this year and are making more money. And the other part of it is I was trying to be very cautious on predicting revenue, because we just didn't know where we were we heading into a recession or what. We just happened to have a really good year. And we also had, when you look at the non-operating budget interest revenues, those are also higher. That includes the R&R funds, the CIP loan funds, and so forth, and also the expansion funds.
Any other questions on?
No,
before I go?
I'm fine.
One thing I wanted to point out, and that would be on page 4 of the report, the non-operating revenues. Expansion fee revenues continue to decrease. And that's under line X04. As you can see, back in 22, they were 1.1 million. Last year, 915,000. This year, 547,000. That's reflective of slowdown in building.
Mm. Mhm.
We also, as Director Thomas alluded to, is increased in interest revenues. Again, higher returns available for us. And that's on X03, it went from 127,000 in 22 up to 1.2 million last year and in 23, 1.8 million last year. That's because we're getting higher returns on investment, even LAIF. So all of those are up. Now, I don't anticipate that to continue because as soon as the Fed start cutting the discount rate, some of the investments we have now, the future investments will go down in earnings. That's why Chandler is looking at all our investments. And if we have longer term investments that are available to us, we're trying to lock it in now.
In one of our not too far in the past meetings, we had a item that came up that we had to face reality that the extraordinary gain in interest that we'd anticipated getting, that there's a cap on how much we can claim. We had to send, there was a tax on that interest. Yes. So these numbers have been adjusted.
No, we have not, because we have to record interest as it's earned. Okay. At the end of this year, just like we did last year, we are going to prepare an entry into the water and sewer CIP funds as a tax liability for future taxes that we will need to pay. We don't pay those taxes until we use all the proceeds from those CIP loans. And we have an arbitrage company that calculates those costs. And now that our numbers are coming finalized, because they needed to know what our CIP costs were from last year, they're going to go ahead and prepare that report. So when we have those numbers, we will know what our total tax liability is, because since then we have moved our investments from Chandler, which was just a money market account, into slugs, demand deposit slugs, state and local government securities that are not subject to the arbitrage tax. It's an old law that was passed in the 70s that people had forgotten all about. And last fall they brought it up and go, wow, we need to switch our investments. So not just us, but another number of public agencies that have investments off of loans had moved into slugs.
Slugs.
That's what they call it. State and local government securities.
That's a very unattractive name. So
all they do is SLGS. They put a U in there. Almost like Sluggo. Okay. I went back in time for that one.
But the point that I'm making is that to the casual observer thumbing through these reports, you'll see that, oh my goodness, we're making so much money on interest, but that's going to be diminished significantly. So
yes. And when you think about it, when you buy a investment vehicle that's maybe 2 years old, over a duration of 2 years, and you bought it right before inflation took off and the Feds cranked up their discount rates, if you tried to sell that investment, you would take a loss, because anybody buying it would see, okay, let's say it's $1 million and you're only earning 2.2%. Yet I can have a current one at 4.25%. Why would I buy something with such a low investment earnings unless I could get a discount on that to make it balance out? So Chandler has been looking at that investment by investment, and when the time comes to be able to pull the trigger, they've been selling those and buying investments at a higher rate of return. However, we can't go out for a longer period of time, because we basically, through our investment policies, have an average duration time between 1.5 to 2.5 years.
Okay.
One other note here, you can see under grant revenues, we did have a significant increase this year, upwards to almost 4 million. The majority of those are CIP projects,
Mhm.
money we have gotten from the state or the feds for capital projects.
But how about the timing on that? We've received them, but they haven't been dispersed yet?
No, we get payments in arrears. We have to
Okay.
expend the money, then we turn around and submit
Right.
claims,
Right.
Yeah.
and then we get paid. So we may be sitting on that expenditure for 2 or 3 months, depending upon the agency.
Okay.
That's why it's always helpful to have cash in the bank, because if we did not have cash in the bank, we would have to take out bridge loans to complete projects. We are very fortunate from early on in 2008 that we started to recognize that and create a funding reserve for CIP projects.
What is the account number for that 4 million that we've been drawing down for the NCPA legal work?
That is actually in the interest reserve fund, 108, and
Okay.
it shows up in the fund balance report.
Okay.
And that's just one component of that interest reserve fund.
Okay, good.
In looking at the expenditure side on the operating expense, if you go down to the bottom of page 7 of the budget status report, we're about 90% of budget. In looking at that, salaries and benefits we are at 90% of budget. We did have vacancies this year that we've been working slowly to fill. However, there are some line items that are higher over budget, some under budget. From my budget perspective, when I look at budgets, I break it down into 3 categories: salaries and benefits, services and supplies, and capital outlay. The biggest area where departments have leeway with is services and supplies. Everything from power to professional services to janitorial services to purchase of pumps and motors, all those things. My feeling is within a department, if you have a budget of, say, 2 million for service and supplies, as long as you stay within that 2 million, I'm okay. You can be over in some, under in some, because budget is just that, it's an estimate of what we're going to spend. I don't subscribe to the notion that at mid-year, we will move money around within different accounts just to balance out our budget, make it look like we're on target. I would rather have a budget and then towards the end of the year, compare where we are. So that gives us an idea where we're going to be for the next year. It gives a much better look at a historical perspective. Some of the numbers that really jump out to me is pumps and motors.
It jumped out to me too.
257% of budget.
Yep.
Where was that?
Page 5. Toward the bottom. 60359.
This is something Damon and I and Pat and Jesse have talked about. We had a lot of failures. We budget for preventive maintenance and a little bit more. We had a number of failures that are costly failures this year. That's why you saw a spike. And it's something we can't ignore. When some component fails, you have to replace it.
Better replace it, yeah.
Yeah.
But we had a report a couple of years ago that kind of shined a bright light on a lot of these elements within our system that are 25 years old and they've been running for 25 years and the prediction was that they're going to start failing.
Mhm.
So I think we just found out that that was a accurate prediction, right?
It certainly was for last year. Some of the things that I've identified, $21,000 for up at Forest Meadows, Huckleberry lift station, 28,000, Copper Cove lift station, 22, 30,000, Arnold lift station, 18, as well as other items.
Mhm.
That's you pointed out earlier on the bottom of page 7 that we've got, it appears like that we spent 2,570,000 less this past year than we had anticipated, right?
If you look directly above that line,
Mm-hmm.
that's the transfers out of 1.3 million.
Uh-huh.
So that's a good portion of that.
Okay.
And this is where we're talking about the monies going in and out for salaries and benefits for staff working on CIP projects.
Okay. But the question I want to ask is, this is, I got my degree in business administration a long time ago. But I remember the term that sort of resonated with me is about quick ratios. You know, what's our quick ratio, our ability to pay our current bills with our current assets? Are we in good shape?
We are in good shape. The
Okay.
challenge always comes when you're talking about CIP projects.
Mhm.
We are still in the process of catch up for the water and sewer operating budgets, especially to pull ourselves out of a negative fund balance in the sewer fund. But I'll get to that in just a moment when we get to those numbers. But the rate study did not anticipate the water fund to be totally self-sufficient until year 3 of the rate study.
Mhm. And we're still on track for that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, one of the other unfortunate things about accounting for public agencies is that if you have an $8 million project, CIP project, and you're paying for that, using operating revenues or loans or whatever, you get it done. You can't show it on your balance sheet that you've got an asset that's worth $8 million. And that's, I mean, I really think that a lot of our customers may not realize that we have, what would you say, $500 million worth of value in buildings and equipment and pipelines and motors and stuff? I mean,
It is significant if you look at replacement value.
mhm.
But when we go through our audit, we factor in depreciation. And that's what tends to obscure the total investment we have in our infrastructure. And I think that's what you're alluding to. When you factor in depreciation, because each year you have items that are depreciated and some that are added on. And it doesn't give the total picture.
Yeah, but there's a phrase about depreciation is a source of funds, not a use of funds. So I mean, depreciation is a kind of a double-edged sword.
It is when you look at what does a balance sheet tell you,
Yeah.
versus what does a budget tell you. They're two completely different things. And the budget will tell me how much our cash flow, what are we going to spend our money on? But the balance sheet is sort of like a snapshot in time. Where are you at this moment?
Well, where is our balance sheet?
It's coming. We're working on the audit. However, what I did include within the discussion on another item is the balance sheet from last year. When we're talking about the strategy for OPEB.
Okay. All right.
It's easier to show it
Yeah.
and identify where we stand.
Okay. Do you have any other questions, Bertha? Okay, continue, Jeff.
Certainly. Capital outlay, we were pretty much at budget. We budgeted 808,000 and we came in at 804,000 worth of expenditures.
Okay, where are we now?
Actually, it is under Z03 capital equipment.
Page?
Oh, sorry, page 7. towards the
We're still on.
last bottom
Okay.
of the page. Under capital equipment.
Mhm. But you were 200,000 off on that, weren't you?
If you go to the line that says capital equipment and the
No, no,
bolded areas, that's where you want to follow.
Well,
That's just
I-
a summation of everything below it.
I misstated that, you were saying that we had a 2004, 804, 250. And the current budget was 808.
482,
Yeah. That's only
4,000.
4,000. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
How did you get it so far off?
You know what? I've got to reassess how I'll do budget for next year.
Good job.
Thank you. It wasn't me. Damon has a lot to do with that because most of the capital expenditures come through operations.
Where is Damon? He should be here to defend himself.
That's a good question. He started out.
Damon, if you're still in the building, come back.
Now, if there aren't any more questions, I can go into detail each department, but a lot of these items that you see are things that we've been reporting on every month, and it's just updated numbers.
Mhm.
Excuse me, just a second.
Getting too hot in here? Oh. Go ahead.
Okay.
Mhm.
If you go to the fund balance report,
Page?
it's right after the budget status report. That's it right there. I think we'll put total page numbers on this report for the next time.
Okay.
So this is what
I have page numbers.
on the fund balance report too.
Mhm.
I may not have mine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
The page numbers are gone now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you look at this report, it lists all our funds, starting with the admin replacement fund, interest reserve fund, all the way down to the assessment districts.
Mhm.
If you go over to the 6th column under unrestricted, we only have two funds that are not restricted in their use. Actually, they're quasi-restricted. One is Fund 300, the water fund. It can only be used for water expenditures. The other is Fund 500 to sewer fund. All the others are restricted. And the ones at the bottom, the assessment district, those are agency funds. Those are not district funds, but we just manage those. That's when we create a assessment district, sort of like Fly and Acres and Dolly Cassidy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you look at Fund 300, and this kind of follows in line what I was talking about, how the rate study identified we had a funding deficiency in the water fund. If you go over to the audited statements, the third column over, for 6/30/2023, we had just about $3.1 million in the water fund. Now, if you go over to the unrestricted, and these are unaudited numbers, we have $1,947,000. There was a significant decrease because we weren't collecting enough revenues. But by the end of the third year, that will stabilize.
Mm.
But on the flip side, if you go down to Fund 500 to sewer fund, it had a negative balance of 1.7 million as of June 30th, 2023. Now, as and these are, again, unaudited numbers, they're subject to change. We have a negative balance at 887,000. So the sewers fund is starting to come back on its feet, but we still have a negative balance. So when we looked at the rate study, not only did it look at operating revenues, it looked at having to return that fund to a positive balance. And our policy states, if I'm not mistaken, we need a reserve of at least $500,000 in that fund. And we need to actually revisit that as we move forward, the dollar amounts. So this is a direct reflection upon how our revenue structures are set up, how they were previously, and how we're moving forward to provide solid financials in both funds.
Okay, you mentioned a few moments ago the Delhi Cassidy Assessment District, and I see that there's only 3,512 left in that agency account.
Well, part of that is the inflow and outflow of property tax money or the assessment money, because when you have the assessments are placed on the property tax. So you get them in December and April, and then a bit of a supplemental, very little on that. But we also have differences of when we have to have money to pay debt service and pay administrative fees. So that will correct itself once we go through the audit. It should be close to maybe 1,000 or 2,000. It's not something that we see excessive amounts of money in those.
But the reason that kind of it piques my interest is I was on the Board of Supervisors when that assessment district was created. And am I to conclude this thing getting lower and lower that assessment will fairly quickly drop off the property owner's bill or responsibility to pay or continue to pay?
Yeah, I was not here, but they did a refunding of it.
Oh.
And so I'd have to go back and take a look at how long that refunding lasted for. But one of the challenges we faced is some people pay off their assessment, and then you have less administrative fees to cover the cost of paying the county to place the assessments on the tax roll, to pay Wildan for the assessment reports and so forth. So that becomes a challenge. Also a challenge to be reimbursed the district for its time and effort. So those are two assessment districts, that combined assessment, that we're keeping a sharp eye on.
Okay, well, it'd be nice to see that close out, and the situation that was solved there was a terrible situation of people.
In both, I was there for the creation of both of them. And it was either originally a 20 or 25-year assessment.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know where it stood on the refinancing, because sometimes when you refinance, you take advantage of lower interest rates, which can then also maybe reduce the term of the loan.
If there was people that the water was so contaminated that they were getting out of their wells, that they were sending their kids to school with red hair.
That was down in Dali.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Bad situation that worked out very well. Okay.
That's
so-
interesting.
so
We have
much
an
of-
assessment district for Wilseyville,
Yes,
$5.43.
that is an old assessment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Shouldn't we just pay that for them?
Yeah, we can look at that. One of the things I'll be looking at this year is West Point, Wilseyville, Dali, and Flyin.
Okay. All right. So Bertha, are you confident we can keep the doors open?
Oh, absolutely.
The next two pages are report on the CIP. where we stand at year end. Again, these are tentative numbers.
Mhm.
And as you're aware, CIP projects tend to go over fiscal years from one fiscal year to another. So when you look at the total project cost, it may not be reflective of the budget amount for that fiscal year. And when we create these budgets, remember we created them back in May for this coming year, things change. We have supply chain issues, just like we're having on the Jenny Lynn AB transmission line and such. So it's a estimate at best. Even though we work with our engineers and our estimators and so forth, when it comes down to reality, weather gets in the way in some cases, supply chain issues and so forth. So when we're looking at water, we had for 23-24, we had about $11.6 million budget. And expenditures were about 7.8 million. Some of the biggest ones that came under budget were the Copper Clearwell and Tank B project, the Copper Cove Tank Transmission Pipeline project, the Big Trees Pump Station. I'm sorry. No, the Hunter's Raw Water Pumps project. Some of this is all based on timing, and some of this is based on approval for some projects if we're looking for grant funding. On the sewer side,
Before we go away
Sure.
from the water thing, take me through this kind of step by step. I see that Copper Cove Burns water line extension. The balance remaining is a negative number, 7,862. So that we have a total estimated cost. We have expended the prior year 23 and 31.8, or 24 and 31.8. It'd be like, I guess I can't do that
Yeah.
arithmetic in my head. So we have spent $7,862 more than we had to spend.
budgeted for.
Okay.
Sometimes projects come up during the fiscal year that they see as a priority, start working on it,
Mhm.
and they work outside the scope of the budget. But that's where engineering comes forth and provides the engineering committee and with an update on their projects.
So
We try not to show negatives.
in that column that the head of the column is total estimated cost, the 60,000 there
Right.
that's the total estimated cost for the whole project over multiple years? Or-
Yes.
Okay.
And the next column over in blue is the budgeted cash flow for 23-24.
Okay.
And engineering did not anticipate any work for that being done that in 23-24, but there was some work done. Still within project budget, but not the budget for the year.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
On the sewer side, it's a little bit, we still have some work has been delayed. For example, the first item on the list is the Arnold Secondary Clarifier. We budgeted 1 million. We were thinking we were going to get state revolving fund money
Mhm.
to State Water Resource Control Board. However, the state's budget took a huge hit and they notified us there's just no money available for it. That's why we're going through the USDA.
Right.
And so that project, even though it's close to about 100% design, we're still doing some environmental work. We just haven't been able to proceed with construction.
Okay, you mentioned Damon earlier. How much of a heartburn is that for him? That we haven't started working on that?
Secondary clarified, no. And even if we get USDA money, we won't be starting till after the thaw of next spring.
Can we hold out that long?
We're gonna have to. So, and that's what Pat and Jesse and Damon are
Yeah.
doing. We just don't have money to do, we don't have 8.5, 8.6 million for the project. We have to get that. We don't have the money to complete that project at this point. We have to take out the loan. And we're hoping that as we moved into fiscal year 24, 25 for the feds, which starts October 1st, that they will have not only loan money, there could be a possibility of some grants because they've identified it as a disadvantaged community.
In Copper Cove?
No, I'm talking about the Arnold.
Oh. Yeah, you have one section that. You can isolate, yeah.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
And when we're looking at some of these other items, sometimes when we look at cash flow, we anticipate full speed ahead on our construction, but we have been running into supply chain issues and some delays in construction. So even though we have some money left over in this fiscal year, it doesn't mean it's not going to get spent in next fiscal year.
Okay, continue.
And finally, on the last page of the budget status report, it shows you the proceeds from the water and sewer CIP funds and the projects they were associated with. So in the sewer CIP fund, which is the two projects that the loan is funding, is Copper Cove Lift Station 6, 8, and Force Main Bypass, and Copper Cove Wastewater Lift Station 15 and 18 rehab. We spent approximately 1.7 million in CIP proceeds, loan proceeds to fund those projects. And in the water side, Copper Cove Tank B Clearwell and Jenny Lynn AB transmission line, we spent just over 3.9 million. And as a footnote, 100% of the funding for the Jenny Lynn AB transmission line is coming from that water CIP loan, and you're going to see a significant amount of expenditures in fiscal year 24-25. I believe they anticipate starting September or October of this year. They had supply chain issues.
We gave them some money.
Yeah, they already purchased some of it, but they need to make sure they have all the supplies they need to start construction. That is a big project.
Yeah. Is that a project that we've had a very pleasant surprise about the cost of it? The bids came in and this contractor was significantly
Yes, it did.
less expensive.
That was as you say, it was a nice surprise.
Yeah.
Very rarely does that happen.
Yeah.
So that's all I have on the budget status report.
Mhm.
I don't know if there's any public questions.
Looks like Mike Rogers has his hand up. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Mike.
my question was more on the agenda item on the assessments, but you didn't call on me, so. But so I don't know if you want me to broach that subject again or not, but that's what my question was in regards to, was the prior agenda topic. But on this topic, thanks, Jeff. This is good information and helps understand where we are relative to grant funding challenges and things like that. So, but my question was really on the assessment.
Are you
topic.
referring to the property tax revenues that we receive?
Yes, and the putting the water or the wastewater bill on the assessment roll by the
Oh.
county.
That is a agenda item that will be following this.
Oh, it is.
Yes,
Okay,
it's
all
not
right.
the next item, but it's after that.
Okay, I apologize. I had to step out. I had to step out for a little while, so I thought you had covered that topic earlier. But if it's forthcoming, then I will put my hand down and wait. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay. Okay, so we're down to 3B on the fiscal year 23-24. Is that correct?
On the 3B.
Yeah.
Which is the fourth quarter investment activities report.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is pre-audit. I'll have to, forgive me if I keep repeating that. Taking a look at this, it really what you see is inflows and outflows of the funds that we have. We have cash in Umpqua Bank, we have cash on hand, petty cash. We have money with LAIF, the local agency investment fund, that's the state. We have money at Chandler and US Bank. And we have some trustee accounts, which are the assessment districts. So we started out in the end of the third quarter, and this is a fiscal year, our fiscal year third quarter, with just under $58 million. And then we ended the fiscal year 58.6 million, an increase of 745,000. A lot of that ended up being investment earnings. We did have money go out for disbursements, and the major portion of that is our CIP projects. And so as Director Thomas was pointing out, that we paid a lot of money out in that fourth quarter for some projects and purchasing. So you'll see that we did get a property tax apportionment, about 1.9 million of inflows, along with some grant reimbursements for the CIP projects. 821,000 for 15091. I believe that's a West Point, Wellesleyville consolidation project. And then the other one is 11095. I apologize. That's for the Redwood, Ebbets Pass Redwood Tank replacement project. And as I mentioned previously, we get paid in arrears. So we submitted those claims quite some time ago, and it takes us a while to get our money back. But we do get it.
So any money that we pay does not, have any bearing on the expenses of the district. We aren't.
It affects our cash,
But not to the extent that it's going to do anything about the operation of.
no, because we kind of keep separate funds for operating
Mhm.
and also in terms of capital projects.
Mhm.
But in totality, when we look at our cash, you got to have money to be able to pay the bills.
Mhm.
And CIP is one of our biggest sucks for
Oh,
money.
yeah.
But, part of it is we have loan proceeds, grant proceeds, money in our expansion funds that we're going to be utilizing, and our capital R&R. So it's a balancing act.
Mhm.
Looking at this this asset description and all the cash that we've got invested in different banks and stuff, I can't find it right now, but there was a reference to a $250 for an expenditure to buy deposit slips. And I would be incensed if we got $20 million invested in some bank that they would charge you for deposit slips.
Well, we don't have $20 million with Umpqua Bank. That's who we bank with. And so that would be the first line.
But we've got $2 million just floating in that account that they're investing, or they're investing in overnight deposits and getting, I would be incensed. I would go down there and tell them that president of CCWD board wants to talk to you.
I can do that. However, there's a balance there too, because they waive all our agency fees or other fees. And so they do give us services for free,
But
but
the
not
deposit-
that one.
The deposit slips ought to be free. I mean,
This
Okay,
is,
come on. What,
got it.
that's obscene. Do you agree, Michael?
did you see that on the claim summary or what, where did you see that? Russ?
It was on expenditures on the first part of the report.
Oh.
Yeah. It's also, I believe, on the claim summary several months ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I missed it then, but I didn't miss it this time.
He's pretty keen.
Yes, he is.
Uh-huh.
Man. Oh, I would have a lot of fun with that one.
Are there any more questions on the investment activity report?
So I guess the answer to this question is, it should be anticipated, but we're lucky or we're, happy with Chandler and what they're doing
At
for
this
us.
point, yes, it was frustrating knowing that our investments were underperforming when interest rates started to go up. But the logic was if we sell, we take a loss.
Yeah.
We can gain more interest, but the investment will take it, or the investment instrument itself will take a hit. Now, moving forward, we're doing fine. Now, also on the US Bank, that's where we have our water and sewer loan proceeds. And if you look at that, we didn't move those, I believe, until May. I think it was late May. And you can see during that time frame, we earned $130,000 in interest on the water side and $51,000 on the sewer side. And that's all going to be tax-free because they're in Director Thomas's favorite acronym,
Slug.
slugs.
Oh,
Okay. Good job. You're investing in that group, or that investment opportunity, Bertha, slugs.
mhm. Okay.
They are earning about last time I checked, it was about 4.18%.
Hmm.
And
Nice.
the thing to note about this is any earnings above the interest rate on the loan, if it wasn't in this account, would be taxable.
Yeah.
And our water loan was about 2.9%. The sewer was about 3.2%.
Hmm.
So it's going to work.
You know, sometimes, it seems like that we take advantage of blind luck, that we chose to do that financing when we did.
Yes.
That's good.
And I actually was kicking myself because I thought we should have closed it like 3 or 4 months earlier when the rates were even lower, but we got good rates.
Great.
And just as another footnote, when you think about why we have to pay tax, these loans are non-taxable loans because they're for infrastructure, and public utilities like CCWD can take out debt for infrastructure improvements, and they're tax-free. So they get a lower interest rate. But when you look at the arbitrage, and this is the first time it's happened since the early 2000s, is that earnings now are higher than the loan interest rate. So that's where, when we first started looking at this, we put it in the money market and just knew that we'd be paying arbitrage. And then last fall, a former cohort of mine of Hilltop called me and told me about this opportunity because they were working with LA Metropolitan Transport District, and they're talking hundreds of millions of dollars in that. So he called me up and said, Jeff, this is what we found out. Nobody remembered that it was an old law in the 70s. So that's where we started shifting over to looking at demand deposit slugs.
Great. Okay, have we beat that one to death?
Mhm.
I have.
Okay, no questions
Nope.
online? Okay. So item 3C, that direction regarding placing sewer bills on the county tax rolls.
Yes, this item is in response to requests from some board members to look into placing our sewer bills on the tax rolls. We reached out and you need to thank this young lady behind me. She reached out and did some research, and we were able to make a connection with McQuallamy Hill Sanitation District because they actually have their sewer bills on the tax rolls. So we talked to them about the process they had, what was the determining factor, and why they did it. Now you have to remember, Moke Hill Sanitation District is very small. They have no permanent employees. Bill is their quasi-employee who helps run the district, but their finance side is a contract employee, part-time. They utilize CPUD to do a lot of their billing and customer outreach. CPUD was charging them an annual fee for this work, and it got to the point where it was about $10,000 a year, and it was escalating because they had to cover their costs, which is understandable. Being such a small district, Moke Hill Sanitation District tried to look at an alternative, and they looked at placing their sewer bills on tax rolls. The reason being is the county charges just 1% of the total amount onto the tax rolls. Their 1% equaled $2,000. So in their mind, do we pay the county $2,000 to put our bills on the tax rolls, or we do continue to work with CPUD, who's charging us $10,000 a year for part of this service along with other things? Simple math. And $8,000 in savings for them is big dollars. They went through the process. It's not easy because they reached out to their customer base, and there was some people who were not for it, but they went through that process, but they also had to get permission from the county and county council and so forth. They were able to do that. So what is their process? They started this last year. They have to have a resolution similar to what we did for placing delinquencies on the tax roll. You identify each parcel, the dollar amount that's going to be placed on the tax roll, your board votes on it, and then it goes over to the county who has to accept it. So theirs was strictly a financial decision. If we look at CCWD, our sewer billings are $8.6 million a year, which would cost us approximately $86,000 to place the sewer bills on tax rolls on an annual basis. It's not just a one-time fee. We would also have to go through that process of identifying all the bills, the amount to be billed to each APN, come to your board, and then have that taken to the county. But we'd also have to get prior permission from the county to be able to do this. Yes, it would be on Teeter, which would be an advantage. But what of our cost savings internally? We only have about 400 and some customers who are actually sewer-only customers. The remaining 5,000 are water and sewer combos. So we would still have to bill those people a water bill as such. So in reality, we'd save about $2,000 a year in billing prices. Plus, we'd have to work internally to be able to prepare that list, go through that, update it. And I don't have an estimate on staff time, but it would be significant. Yes, there's staff time involved in going to data pros, buying and selling of houses and so forth. But one of the advantages to placing it on the tax roll is we get our money because we're part of the Teeter plan.
Right.
However, at the end of the year, if there's some delinquencies like there are this time, we can put them on tax roll at a significantly less cost than $86,000 and for the sewer side and get our money back. So if you want to break it down into sheer numbers, it doesn't make sense financially to do this. The young lady at Moke Hill said they got a lot of pushback from customers who did not want to do that. A lot of them are on fixed incomes and they bill monthly, so they are able to budget for it. But through outreach and through the board and everything else, They decided to move forward. There's still some customers that do not like that.
This would be an extensive program that we'd have to take on if we even thought about it. And, again, okay, first of all, we'd have to make sure that we're equipped to handle it financially.
Correct.
Okay, then the second part of it would be dealing with the customers,
Mhm.
having a big program to sell it to the customers. In the end result, as you say, what's the advantage to CCWD?
Sure. And people can say, okay, internal staff, you have staff. Can you eliminate a position if you put it on the tax, move it from regular billing to the tax rolls? And honestly, I
No.
don't think so because of all the work that would have to be done.
No.
Starting at the top of this report here, the Moke Hill Sewer District, I mean, it doesn't state it here, but they do not provide water.
No,
Okay. So that's what jumps off the page to me, is that since we're billing for water and sewer to, 15,000 customers for the water, and is it 15 or 13?
it's a little over
13,
13,000
yeah.
water and 54 sewer,
Okay,
5,400.
yeah. But I agree with you completely that there's no savings there. The one, we have a director that sits over there that was pushing for this, and there was some perceived advantage in having our bills only consist of water bills, so that I think the idea was that the customer would perceive it as a big reduction in the amount of money that they owed to CCWD. But it
When
doesn't.
in fact, there's,
Well, it has some severe unintended consequences.
oh, absolutely.
I would, for the customer, and I could see completely why the fixed income folks would be really negatively impacted by this. So,
And I do have to mention that when we started looking at it, because we were asked to, we kept running into roadblocks in the county. Because of it have to go through county council, we'd have to give them certain documents. And in talking to Moke Hill Sanitation District, they ran into some similar things. And Kylie, as we were talking about this, Kylie was looking at that and reached out to Moke Hill Sanitation District. We talked to them. So we were able to get much more information from them than we would have come through the county at this particular point in time. I'm not saying the county was stonewalling us, but it is a lengthy process to get the sewer bills on the tax rolls. As far as the county is concerned, you have to show them your authority to be able to place bills on the tax rolls, your authority to be able to charge people for their sewer bills and so forth. But I look at it strictly from a financial viewpoint.
Mhm. And I'm looking at it from a volume.
That too, yeah.
Volume and financial and.
And impact on customers.
Right.
Michael, you have a calculator over there? Okay. Anyway, I did a little pencil pushing on this just to satisfy my own curiosity that I think that they've got this page here says that they've got 8.6 million in sewer bills. They've got, I think, 5,400. How do they have 5,400 sewer customers in Moke Hill?
No, this is us. You're down in the third paragraph,
Right.
The district's
the district
total
total.
is approximately 8.6 million.
Okay.
I
That's
identified Moke
That's
Hill
us.
as MHSD.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I'm.
So their annual billings are about 200,000.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out what that calculates out to. You interpolate in the numbers to see what their average billing per parcel per month is.
Do you remember? I think it was 240 something. Somewhere in the lower half of the 200s, total customers.
Okay. Well, we can talk about this offline. I just wanted to get a comparison between what they're charging their sewer customers compared to what we're charging.
Now, this is for information only. We don't need to act upon it, but I do believe you have some questions online if you're ready to move on.
I'm ready to move on, but I see that other people aren't. Michael, you had some questions on this?
Yeah,
Rogers?
thank you. Yes, thank you. So I'm also looking at the document on the agenda here. So just to be clear, the proposal is to move all wastewater customers to the assessment rolls. Is that correct?
Actually, that was something we were asked to look into, to move all the sewer bills onto the county tax rolls. So in reality, yes.
So
We-
the 8.6 million then represents all wastewater customers, not just the ones that are wastewater only. It's all.
That is correct.
Okay. And so to me, the 1% fee from the county, and I realize, you know, we don't have any control over that. It seems quite high as a management fee. You look at management fees or processing fees or whatever, you know, 1% seems quite high. But as you go on, you say that this would average about $2,000 per year per account holder, if I'm understanding this properly. So with a 1% fee, that's $20 a year. So does that $20 get passed on to the ratepayer? Who's paying the $20? Me or somebody else?
Well, for clarification, in totality, the billing for next year, the budget is 8.6 million for all sewer customers.
Okay.
It would cost the district, the county would charge the district 1% or $86,000 in fees.
Correct.
Now, there's only 435 sewer only customers. The reason I bring that up is they would not receive a bill through Data Pros. That's who we use to send out our bills. That savings for those 435 customers comes to $2,000 a year. So
Oh, I got you. I see. Okay.
yeah,
I misunderstood, but the $86,000 in fees, does that get passed on to the ratepayer in the assessment, or
We haven't
What is-
even gotten to,
no, we haven't even gotten to
we
that
haven't
point.
even gotten to that.
okay, all
Yeah.
right. Hey,
Um,
I understand that it's, you know, it's information only and it's something being considered, and if so, I mean, that to me is an important consideration. 1% seems high. If it gets passed on to the ratepayer, there's not a whole lot of benefit to us ratepayers under those circumstances. But I will kick it back to you, and just, you know, for future reference, I would be concerned about that.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Thank you for your comment.
Just to put your mind at ease, Michael, we haven't voted on this here. We're not supposed to, but we have two directors that are not in favor of this, of going this way. So
Mhm.
I don't think you have anything to worry about.
Yeah. Okay. No, it's good information. And, you know, again, I appreciate the fact that you're looking at alternatives to making things leaner and meaner. And so, and if it helps us, then great. But
Well,
if there's no
yeah,
real value added, then I don't see the purpose, you know.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, that is that, you know, we want advantage to the customer in whatever decisions we're making. So, but we don't see it here.
agreed.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I see another hand raised. The initials are PR.
Well, let's see if my microphone works this time. Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, great. It's Pat Roy, Rancho Calaveras.
Oh, hi,
Um,
Patrick.
Hi, how you doing? Apparently, I'm preaching to the choir with this response, but at the same time, this is a great example of how something on paper looks really good, but in reality, it's probably not going to work out well. But I see your ratepayers here in the county having the same objections overall as the elderly residents of Moke Hill. in dealing with this split up of billings. I would also see it has an appearance of placing more and more burden on property tax rolls, which is going to cause more burden on the people that budget for things monthly, and then suddenly at the end of the year you get this huge tax bill that they won't be able to pay. So, you can see an inference of a potential land grab taking place here. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it has an appearance. But I'm very pleased to see that at least two of the directors are opposing this split up of the tax bills or of the sewer bill and so forth, and assignation to the county. Somewhere along the line, the ratepayers are going to end up picking up the tab for whatever fees, charges, or problems that are going to become associated with it. So thanks for opposing it.
Okay, thanks, Pat. I don't see any other hands. Jeff, can we go on to item, let's see, the
3D?
retiree?
3E. Mhm.
Yes, sir. Okay. Now we get into some theoretical items. Can you go to the next? Oh, I can do that. Okay, next slide, please. If you remember, and part of this is in the staff report, and I know you read it very intently before you fell asleep. And
Well, I did read it very intently, and it seems to me, maybe, I'm having a little deja vu or something here, but the board acted on this. I mean, we took the recommendations and recommended the moderate investment philosophy before, didn't we?
no, there was no action item on that last report, so we could not take any action.
Oh,
Yes, it was just a receive and file. So I wanted to come back and to
Okay.
do a little bit more in-depth
Okay.
review of some information and to see if it was to take it to the next level or your thoughts. So this is kind of a more in-depth view of our retiree health trust fund and the investment strategies, just so you have a little bit more background information.
okay.
So I will try to make this as fast as possible. You know this first slide. We provide OPEB benefits to retirees. We've put our money in the section 115 trust with PARS, the Public Agency Retirement Services, and the trustee is PFM Management, which is part of US Bank now. US PFM invests our funds based on our strategy. They don't tell us which strategy to use. We tell them.
Finally, thanks for being here today. Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, I just wanted to be that clear. They are not investment advisors. They are fiduciary. They manage our funds based on our investment strategies. And PARS had the different investment strategies that they were talking about: conservative, moderately conservative, moderate, balanced, and capital assets, capital appreciation. What drove all this, next slide, please, is our annual GASB 75 disclosures. Back in June, in June, the GovInvest provided you with a report on our retiree health fund and where it stood. The key number here is our net OPEB liability. That's how much we owe for future benefits that are going to be paid out by the district. We do have a trust fund with a certain amount of money in there, but that trust fund is deficient in how much money we're going to need to fund those benefits. So that was a big disclosure that we had in the GASB 75. Now, part of that net OPEB liability, just to give you a timeline, At the end of, and we're always a year behind in our valuations. And as of June 30th, 22, our net OPEB liability was just under 8.2 million. It was reduced to 5.9 million at end of 2020, end of June 30th, 2023. As GovInvest noted, the decrease is attributed to better actuarial asset performance and favorable demographics that is offset by slightly higher healthcare. Demographics, they really look at each individual. They project out what your costs are going to be moving forward. They look at current retirees and so forth. It's a actuarials, they're in nirvana when they do this stuff. They're beyond CPAs, beyond us. They're truly a unique set of individuals.
They just have a better dartboard.
They do,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot better modeling than we do. They looked at the current funding deficiency for 1 year is 410,000, but it's more significant than that as we move forward. Next slide, please. And although we experienced a $2.2 million decrease in 23, it's still nearly $4 million higher than the 2 million it was in 2021. So we went from 2 million to nearly 6 million over a 2-year time frame. It made a huge jump from 2 million to 8.2 million from 21 to 22, and then it dropped down again to just under $6 million. So why did that happen? A lot of it had to do with the expected rate of return, which is our discount rate. In the past, up to that year, up to 21, our discount rate was set at 7%. They lowered it in 21 to 6%. Why did they do that? They looked at our moderate investment portfolio and said, are we going to be able to get 7% return on our moderate? The answer is no. So they dropped it down a full percentage point, which is it's really aggressive. You could drop it down 0.25%, 0.5%, or 0.75%. So what you have is a full 1% drop. What that does, it affects your future earnings, because instead of projecting out 7%, you're now projecting out 6% earnings on your investments, which basically reduces the amount of money available to fund future benefits. So, and that in turn reduced the projected assets, but your liabilities basically stayed the same. So what that did is it increased your unfunded liabilities, what they call net OPEB liabilities. So why is that important? Next slide, please. This is small, but you can see it as your PowerPoint. This is the statement of net position from last year's audit, the audited financial statements of June 30th, 2023. I highlighted the areas under non-current liabilities. The first line is net pension liability. That's our PERS liability. You can see it went from 422,000 in 22 up to 8.5 million in 2023. The number below it for 2022, it went from 2 million for the OPEB, other post-employment benefits, retiree health, from 2 million to 8.2 million. Why such increases? Well, as I mentioned previously, on the OPEB, it's because it's predominantly due to the change in the discount rate. In PERS, if you remember a few years back, PERS had a 21% return on their investments. And just like our OPEB, the valuations stagger a year. So in 2022, they factored in a 2021 huge rate of investment returns, and they dropped our UAL, our unfunded accrued liability, way down. What happened the next year? Because their target was about 6.757% as their discount rate. The following year, they missed it. They came in under, so they had losses. So that's why you see such a big swing on the district's unfunded accrued liability through PERS, is because a lot of it is based on their performance in the investment area. Yes, there are some changes based on some rule changes, some discount rule changes, some actuarial changes, mortality rates and those things. But the biggest factor in our PERS liability is investment returns. They had a good return this year, a little over 9%, but that's not going to affect our numbers, our valuation until they come out for next year. So again, it's a lag. It's a one up and down. So is there anything we can do to affect our PERS liability? The only thing available to it this time is to pay down our unfunded accrued liability, which at this point stands at about $10.3 million. Do you want to be 100% funded in PERS? You don't have to be. You try to stay above 80%. We dropped below it this past year, but I think it'll change. So it's kind of a moving target. On the OPEB, we do have an opportunity to make some changes there, affect that. But let's look at this, the two numbers combined. If we look at that, the total liability between PERS and OPEB increased $14 million from fiscal year 22 to 23. What does that do? If you look at our total non-current liabilities, the majority of the increase from 47 million to 59 million are related to the PERS, unfunded accrued liability, and the OPEB, net OPEB liability. So what does that mean? It's on our balance sheet. For us, if we were in a vacuum, I wouldn't be that worried about it. But we are also in a situation where we are going to be issuing debt. And when lenders look at that, they go to this. They dive into your financials. They look at your budget, but they're more interested in your audited financial statements. They know that there are ups and down swings. They realize that. But if they dig in deeper, they say, do you have enough funds to pay your obligations for pensions and OPEB in addition to your debt service, in addition to your operating expenses? So that's something that we have to recognize. And at some point, we're going to be issuing debt. We talked about the debt for the USDA for sewer, 8.6 million. That's going to take a big hit on our ability to do any future fundings with sewer. And when we look at water. So will a lender turn us down? Probably not. Will they charge us more? That's a distinct possibility because they look at the risk involved with lending the district money. So I just wanted to put that in perspective in that how does it affect the district? This is where it comes up in the balance sheet and our bottom line. Now, does that necessitate us to make a change? I'm not there yet, but I wanted to show that to you so you can look at how it affects our bottom line. Any questions on the statement of net positions and non-current liabilities?
I'd like to know when it will affect our bottom line.
From a budgetary standpoint, it does not.
When will it?
I can only say that when we issue debt, it could affect our bottom, it could affect us.
And we are going to.
We're going to need to, and when we issue debt, it's for capital projects. And as you're well aware, we don't have enough cash to meet our current CIP, 5-year CIP. So we will have to be issuing debt. We're looking at least another 10 to 15 million in water coming out soon for this next run of CIP. We're looking at about 10 million on the sewer side for next year, but we're taking a big chunk out of that through USDA. And when we look at, remember the debt service coverage ratio term?
Right.
That's where we have to get into that modeling as well.
Okay, these actuarial folks, I'm just curious about whether they are anticipating that there will be future enrollees in the post-employment benefit plan?
Hmm.
To do, are they working with the numbers that are in there now, or do they anticipate that there will be people retiring and affecting that?
They look at
Future.
current census and they look at people retiring. They do project out, because remember, we have a bifurcated system now
Mhm.
for retiree health.
Right.
New employees get it's a defined benefit, which, I mean, a defined contribution. They get X amount of dollars per paycheck put into a retiree health savings account. But they also get, because this is through PERS and PIMCO, which we get our health insurance through PERS, they will get what is now a base amount of $150 per month to help offset their retiree health costs once they retire.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
right.
They don't get the full amount that previous current employees that were hired before a previous date, I think it was 2019 or 20, or I think it was 2020, that up to that time, everybody had retiree health benefits, the full blown. Employees hired after that got the bifurcated system. It's only those that are older, that are under the older umbrella, get the full blown retiree health. And they do look at that. They look at those people who are eligible for that. They look at their age, they look at mortality rates, everything else. So that's how they project out. At some point in the future, and I'm not saying this in a mean way, all the employees under the older system will no longer be around to collect those benefits, and it'll be just everybody in the new system. But that's off in the distance, because
Yeah.
even after they retire, we still provide them benefit. It's sort of like PERS. We do have, PERS made changes in 2013 on the programs that we have. We have people under the old miscellaneous system that is a little bit richer benefits than the newer ones. When all those people retire, we'll still be responsible for their benefits as they move forward until they're no longer on the rolls.
So they take into account mortality expectations and stuff like
Yes.
that. So, okay.
And those mortality rates do change.
Yeah.
With COVID and everything else, it brought down the mortality rate to a lower age, more so in men than women. So they're plugged into all those statistics.
Back when I was wearing a contractor's hat, I mean, I was a union employer, and I was always looking at the unfunded liability in case I wanted to just shut my doors.
Mhm.
But realistically, how serious is this for an entity like this that can't shut the doors? I mean, we're obligated to do what we do into perpetuity, I think, aren't we?
We are.
So, I mean, things change, and we're in some fairly hard-knuckled negotiations now with on the FERC renewal, that with any luck, we should be in a much better financial position coming out of that negotiation than we are currently. So, is there any real need, other than your nervousness, to make a change?
And this is where I want to get to the next slides,
Okay.
because if we go to the next slide, please. So this is, I kind of covered this on the changes in the net OPEB liability and the PERS, so forth. Now, next slide, please. As I mentioned, the district has options to mitigate the net OPEB liability. We can pay them a one-time fee of $410,000 and get pretty close if we want to do that. However, that's not in the budget. The other option is to look at how our investment strategy is. Remember, it's matching up your investment strategy with your discount rate. When Andrew Brown of PFM was here at the prior meeting, he talked about the targets for each of the funds. The conservative, moderately conservative, moderate, and balanced. So if we, let's go to the next slide, please. Here is one of the slides he presented that talks about how each of the different asset allocation strategies are. And these are the ones that were created, through PARS, and these are the asset allocation. So if you look at moderate, we have 50% in equities, which is stocks, 45% in fixed income, which are bonds, and 5% in cash. So there's risk associated with that. Now, the expected rate of return is right around 7%. That's on the intermediate 5-year. Longer term, it's down to 6.3%. So that's still above our target discount rate of 6%. That's what we're kind of looking at. So we're making more than what the projection is. We'll make more than what our discount rate is at 6%. If they're looking at a balanced option, it goes 60% in equities, 35% in fixed income, and 5% in cash. The cash is because you're moving money in and out of investments. You want to have some cash available. Now, the expected rate of return over 5 years is 7.2%, and the expected rate of return over 30 years is 6.5%. I don't look at changing our discount rate to 7%. The question is, do we look at moving it from 6 to 6.5%, and how will that affect us? Well, be able to move the discount rate, you have to change your investment strategy. But if you change your investment strategy, you have to be able to get those returns. And that's part that I mentioned in the staff report. If you don't meet those investment strategy returns, then you can't change your discount rate, and you also run the risk of losing money in the trust. So it's the risk reward factor. And if you go to the next slide, please. Here is a chart again from PFM that shows the rate of return of risk deviation between the moderate and all of the 5 different strategies. And you can see the balance is slightly more risk than the moderate, significantly less than the capital appreciation, and much more than the conservative or moderately conservative. So between the moderate and balanced, they're fairly close in the risk associated with it. Next slide, please. And it's a little bit more in the long term between the moderate and the balanced. So yes, there is more risk associated with the going to a balanced. Now, is that risk worth it? That's something that I don't have an answer for at this point. In talking to Andrew, and again, he does not advise us on which asset allocation to use. He did say that, and I think he provided you this information, over the course of our involvement with them since 2008, there were only really 2 years where the balanced asset allocation, the balanced asset allocation took a hit. And that was during the recession early on, or during the recession era, and also when the market took a big dive during COVID, when the equities market went down. But when you look at it spread out over years, you do have ups and downs, and actually both the moderate and the balance, but over time, and remember, that's what we're looking at, a longer horizon for our investments. Over time, the balance created more of a asset improvement, trust fund improvement, than the moderate did. So in my mind, it comes down to, do we want to take the risk to be able to move forward, to be able to maybe earn some more money, and to get our discount rate down, to be able to look at our net, maybe change the net OPEB liability if they match that, or do we stand pat and just suffer the consequences, or any potential consequences of having an increased liability, net OPEB liability. And remember, the change in the net OPEB liability is not of the same magnitude you see on PERS. Pension liability, the cyclical swings.
Comments, Bertha?
Oh, yeah. I'll comment after you, Russ.
Okay.
There's a lot to this,
Oh, my God. Tell me. Yeah.
but I'd rather share this with you
Uh-huh.
so we can go ahead and your board can make a decision. Now,
Well,
I have to
you know-
remember, Michael was cautious about this.
As far as I'm concerned, I would entertain a workshop
Okay,
with the board, with the entire board, because I'm not going to be, making any kind of a recommendation
Mhm.
on this. There's too much involved.
Did you find this beneficial?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And it's going to take the place of my National Geographic nighttime reading.
I can provide you the valuation from GovInvest and also our PERS valuations.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well,
And how do you feel about it, Russ?
well, maybe I'm wrong about my conclusion here, but you're nervous about what, we go out to try to borrow some money. And a lending institution is gonna look at it and say, looks like that you're $410,000 short on your,
Right.
your liability, if it was
Yeah.
$410,000 less, we'd look at this with greater favor. So what they're gonna do is they'll say, well, we'll still own you the money, but we're gonna charge you 0.5% more than we would have charged if you were 410,000 richer in that particular asset, or not asset account, but liability account. I think that's the way that I would prefer to go, is just pay the extra interest for the duration of that loan, because the difference between whatever interest rate that they were going to charge and the interest rate that would have been the preferred rate, 0.5% more, is going to be, in my estimation, less than $410,000 coming out of our checking account right now.
It's something we can look at if you want me to present this to the full board, because then I can run some scenarios as to a break even. But, when you're talking about small loans, it's less of a factor. But when you're talking $15 million over 20 years, I need to run the numbers, but I can do that and bring that back and make it part of the next presentation. But you make a very valid point.
Well, I hope so.
Or do we just let it ride? So,
This is information that the board needs to
Yeah.
hear,
sure.
Yeah.
but I don't think we need to devote a day for a workshop. on
No,
this.
no,
It's
no,
just
this was
an agenda item.
informational only.
I spent less time up here than Kelly did on her Tyler presentation.
Yeah,
But yes, I can do that as one of the numbers.
but speaking about her presentation, her presentation is gonna come to the full board at some point?
Yes. And I'm not sure if it's next meeting or September, because I believe Kelly R and Kelly G are alternating with their
Yeah.
presentations to the board.
Yeah,
But I think it's the second board meeting of the month. And I can find out. if
That's next one.
That's next week's
Yeah.
meeting.
That's next week's meeting.
Yeah, but I can't recall what Michael had spoken about, who starts in August and who will be reporting in September.
the phases that she explained to us, I mean, she could come next week to the board with this. But if we wait until the end of September or something, this will have to be redone. So ask her what she thinks.
I will do so.
Okay.
And I know Michael's spending this afternoon listening to this meeting instead of celebrating his birthday with his family. So he's listening to you now, said with deep sarcasm.
Bertha needs to sing happy birthday, Michael, if you're listening.
Is he on there? Sorry.
Well,
Oh, you can, he can watch the recording.
all right,
No. Russ can sing happy birthday.
I'm totally off key, so don't even ask me.
Right.
You can do it next week belatedly.
Okay. We'll get an orchestra in for that.
This is completely,
It's just numbers, Bertha. Just numbers.
Again, I thought more information is better than less.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
All
thank
right.
you for that, Jeff.
You're welcome.
So, but I do need a full report on this $250 charge for deposit slips.
I will do that. And I'll also tell you how much we're saving in other fees.
Oh, we do have a public comment? And who might that be? Pat Roy?
That's the guy.
Come
Okay, this-
on. Bring,
right.
bring it on, Pat.
This is going to be a difficult one probably for you, or maybe less so for you than for me, because it takes me into an area that may not be open for discussion. But, seeing that there's definitely going to be some kind of unfunded liability here, and there's probably going to be a need to fulfill that liability, and then where that liability is fulfilled from, which I can almost guarantee it's going to lean towards robbing CIP budgets to fill it somewhere down the line, which for me is a non-starter. But by the same token, being not familiar with the PERS contract process or your current contracts and whether or not it's standalone or statewide, the question is kind of odd, but is there any way that some of this unfunded liability could be shifted more towards an employee burden where they're picking up more of the cost for their own later services after retirement or something like that by contributing more to it now? I just don't know how this whole thing works with PERS, and I don't even know if you could talk about it. So
Well, I know a little bit about asking employees to contribute more. That would be a meet and confer thing. It would have to be negotiated, and it was only a couple of years ago that we made some significant changes. So,
okay, so go ahead.
so anyway, that's not, no, we can't do it, a statement in that regard, but everything is possible. But you may not have heard Jeff say that the expectation is that the typical entity like we are, whether start with Metropolitan in the south or over at Amador, just north of us, nobody expects you to be 100% funded on your unfunded liability. 80% is the benchmark. If you're at 80%, then you're healthy and comparable to everybody else in the state, I think. Isn't that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. So in my view, there's no reason to get our panties in a twist about this.
Oh, well, they're not, trust me. I just look at the situation the state's in with its unfunded liabilities, which I think exceeds the state admitted budget deficit. And I know that medical expenses rise about 3 times faster than the rate of inflation. So, I mean, I'm just looking farther down the road to see how it could be, that deficit could be minimized at some point. I just don't know. And I thank Mr. Bear for this presentation today because he was quite informative. So I suppose you've answered my question. I didn't really expect one, but you've provided a lot of enlightenment. So thank you.
Okay.
If I may add to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
go ahead.
First off, our funds through PERS are not commingled with the state. Whatever the state decides to do has no impact upon us as
Thank
far
you.
as our investments. What happened though, and I have to give Jerry Brown credit for this, which I very rarely do, is that in 2013, he created a new program for PERS called PEPRA. And that's where he made changes to the benefits for employees. And so all employees hired after, I can't remember, sometime in 2013, maybe January 1, something like that, were under a new plan with reduced benefits, with reduced costs.
I recall that, yeah.
Yes, and so that helps the district reduce their costs as more people retire and more people coming in on the less,
Right.
I don't want to say rich, less generous pension, because pension is a good thing, honestly.
Call it tiered.
Yeah, so it's because it allows the district to save money and reduce its unfunded liability. If you look at our three plans that we have, miscellaneous at 55, miscellaneous tier 2, and PEPRA, our unfunded liabilities for PEPRA and miscellaneous tier 2 total less than $20,000. Our
That's-
biggest unfunded liability is more in the terms of a miscellaneous. But as those people start retiring, there's going to be less and less cost associated with that. And the benefits, the UAL, unfunded accrued liability for those other programs, is going to be significantly less. So that's how we're managing our PERS. And thank goodness for Jerry Brown. He stood up to the unions and said, we needed this. Now, as far as and we'll know what our funded ratio is when we get our next valuation. Again, that moves up and down based on PERS investment returns. As far as our OPEB, other post-benefit employee benefits such as retiree health, we do have a little bit more control over that. But our biggest control factor was back in 2020, 2021, when we changed the benefit package for new employees. Similar to what PERS did, newer employees get a defined contribution, which does not affect your value, your net OPEB liability like a defined benefit program does. They still get the $150 a month at this particular point, which can escalate a little bit, but it's not as much as it would be under the old program. So the district has taken steps to be able to reduce their pension and OPEB liabilities. And I want to applaud your board and the employees for stepping forward and making that change back in several years back.
That's interesting to know that for this rare case, attrition is actually going to be the solution to quite a great percentage of the problem. So that's odd that's rare that happens, but it is good to see that the people are stepping forward, recognizing there's a problem that everybody's going to have to pitch in and work together to make it work. And so thank you for the clarification and the explanations. I appreciate that.
Certainly. And one more note, because we've been at this for quite some time. GovInvest will do another valuation within 2 years, and the numbers will probably change.
Of course.
So we'll take a look at it. And we're looking at long-term, so it can go up and down and so forth. At some point, what we want to be able to do is not make any contributions to our trust, which we haven't done for several years.
Mhm.
It's pay as you go.
Love it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you buy a new microphone?
No, what had happened, I'd gotten my computer back from the repair station and a bunch of the settings were all messed up. And the way this works out with Teams and then the laptop interfaces and so forth, there's 2 different locations to mute and unmute a microphone, but there is another control panel deeper within the Microsoft system or the Windows system that was kind of hiding back there. So I had a latent mutation taking place, and I had a devil of a time finding it. I didn't find it till the end of the meeting. So I really apologize for the way that went the last time, because it ate up a lot of time and it caused everybody a little frustration, including myself. But I've got that worked out. Thank you very much.
Well, you're coming across with such a high fidelity. I think the term is, I read you 5 by 5. So,
Works for me, 10-4.
okay.
All right. Thanks
Thank
again.
you.
It's
You're
like the RCA dog next to the
Yeah.
speaker.
You could do a,
welcome. RCA Victor. I'm
you could
old.
do a podcast right now. So, okay, where are we? Director of Administrative Services comments.
Just one. The audit is ongoing. And That's
Okay.
all I have.
And where's our general manager? He's
No comments today.
no comments. Okay, director's comments. Bertha,
Oh.
sorry,
I hope to be ready for the full board meeting. Jeff, you're gonna help me.
Yes, I will.
okay, sorry I kept you here so long, Bertha.
I know it.
Yeah,
That's what I get for putting you in charge.
I figured you were gonna be cracking the whip here today. I'm just a alternate. Oh, speaking of alternates, I'm gonna be going to the meeting tomorrow, the T-stand. You're not gonna make it over there for that.
What was my?
You had some lame excuse. I can't remember.
I only have a reason because I have such capable replacement.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah, no, I can't make it tomorrow. Thank you.
All right. So I think that concludes our business here today. The next meeting will be Tuesday, September the 17th at 1 p.m. And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.